going on, guys? Welcome back to another GGF video, and this one's going to be a bit of a mod build video on this recent build I did here. So I've done a time-lapse video on this. TRYX sent me their brand new Panorama WB. So for the Panorama WB means water block. You're probably familiar with this sort of all-in-one cooler looking design from TRYX, but they've now introduced it into a custom water block. So I was one of the first to get it. I really appreciate them for reaching out and sending this to me, but I also wanted to do a little bit more of a video where I can talk about this product and also talk about the new revision on the LUCA L70 chassis, because we know when this launched, there were a few issues on the chassis. I didn't really have any sort of really bad experiences with my version when I reviewed it. I did a follow-up video on my review just to clarify some of the things in my original view. But this is the revision. They're calling it revision 1.0. I kind of feel that 1.0 would be the first model, but first model was no revision. The refresh is 1.0. We'll go over all the changes they did, things to make it a better user experience. I'm going to talk about the water block and then a little bit more about this build as well. So as I said earlier, the water block is now launched. I think Titan Rig are the main ones selling it. Might be on Amazon, but it does retail for $239.99. So basically $240. I get an Amazon Titan Rig. So that is not too bad. I think like we're not looking at an extreme high performance top of the line $300-400 custom water block from a well-known manufacturer. I guess the main selling point for this one is that gorgeous, I think it's a 6.67 inch AMOLED 60 Hz screen. Now this uses the same Canali software that the all-in-one cooler version uses, and it's really simple to use. You can do things like a single screen where it wraps all the way around. You can put animations, pictures, anything you want, or you can set it into two separate screens. So basically you have two viewing angles. You have the front half, I would say this side, and then you have the other front half on that side. So when I did this build, I set the one side up with all my CPU stats, CPU temps, CPU clock and all of that. And then on the other side, I set it to the GPU stats like GPU temp, GPU, the clocks and the wattage and things like that. So that's pretty cool. You can also theme them, create your own background. You could have like a CPU theme on this side, GPU theme on that side, or whatever you want. You could just have a random video playing on it if you like. Now, supports all the sockets, AM4, AM5, Intel 1851. Not that too many people are probably using it, which I actually did on this one. All of my AMD CPUs were used in other builds, and I also recently got the Z890. This is the Hero BTF. I wanted to test out all the back connections for this one, so I used the Intel 1851. It supports socket 1200, and then the 115X, which was like the 1150, 1151, which is pretty old school. Now it does have a copper cold plate, which is good to see. I didn't dismantle all of that. I wish I had a second unit that I could hold physically, but this one's in the build and I don't want to pull this apart just yet until I have finished this video. I may even pull this apart once this video is done so I can get some extra shots on the cooler so we can see. Now, it's a bit confusing. It runs the Asetek Gen 8 V2 architecture. Now, it doesn't run a pump. There's no pump in there, but it runs the same architecture. So other all-in-one coolers that use that architecture uses the same mounting bracket, which does have some slight adjustments. If you look on their website, has a little bit of movement up and down for better motherboard compatibility, but there is no pump in there. The only thing it does have is it has a VRM fan. So if I take this off, probably not going to be able to get this back on now, but you can see what's right there. There is a VRM fan. Now I tested this. It just goes off to a standard PWM header. You can run that into your motherboard anywhere you like. It's pretty much inaudible up to about 80 or so %. Once you go over that, it has a bit of annoying little whine, but anything below 80%, I put my hands down the side. There are quite a few little holes on the side here that allows the air to go through, and that's basically designed to cool the VRM heatsinks here and on the side. Now, do you need that? Probably not. Most high-end boards like this, it's going to have a beefy VRM setup, and the cooling is going to be pretty decent as well already on the motherboard. Like some extreme overclockers, when they're overclocking their CPUs, most of the time doing LN2, they don't even have the VRM heatsinks even on the motherboard. So you probably don't even need that. You can just leave it unplugged. I really wish the cable they had that came out, I ran it up here in the corner. I wish there was like a socket, so if you did not want to run that VRM fan at all, instead of just trying to leave it tucked around somewhere around the socket, you could just unplug it and then you don't need to run it at all. Now, another cool thing is as I just pull that apart, the screen uses a USB connection and that just clips on. I'm gonna see if I can put this back on. Clips back on like so, and that sticks on via magnets, and it has pogo pins that hold that. So internal USB header runs down into your motherboard. So just remember, no pump. It's probably a good thing because if you are running this in a custom loop, the stock pump is probably going to struggle. Maybe if you're doing a single rad loop like on an all-in-one cooler, the pump wouldn't be too bad, but having two radiators, a massive FLT like this, although radiators are the least restrictive, which is quite confusing for people. People think having radiators is going to be very restricted, but they're not. Normally blocks are the most. So having 2 blocks, FLT, 2 rads, probably going with a custom pump. I got a D5 on the back of here. I had no issues at all. Packaging is pretty nice. This is it here in the time lapse. I showed a little bit on this. You do get 4 fittings. So you get 2 of your hard tube end fittings. These are 16mm outer diameter. These are the newer sort of refresh design that a lot of companies are doing. Instead of having that O-ring, single little O-ring on the outside, and you have multiple O-rings in the middle of the fitting, you have no O-rings at all in the base fitting. So what you do is you put this sort of large sleeve over it. I'll get some close-ups on this, and then this just seats in there nicely. And then as you screw this down, it kind of just pushes it all together. But a lot of companies have started to do this. Now, is it worth getting fittings with this? I'd probably say not. It's probably just like a little novelty thing. Giving you 2 fittings like that, you're probably going to need more. And then you get 2 90s rotating fittings. It's quite tight, which is nice. I've never really liked fittings that are super, super loose, but these ones feel really nice. They do have the TRYX logo on them, but getting 2 90s and 2 end fittings on a whole loop like this, well, can't really see my fittings. I'll talk a little bit about how I did that later on. You're definitely going to need more fittings, and the fact that you can't purchase these, or I can't see where you can purchase more of these, like I doubt it if TRYX has a full ecosystem of fittings where they have extensions, more end fittings, offset fittings, other rotaries. It's probably going to be very unlikely. So you're going to have to go with another brand like EK or Bits Power. So they're probably not going to match. So if it affects the price, I would say don't bother throwing them in. Now, moving on to temps, I didn't really spend too much time on this. I haven't really dived too much into the temps on the new Intel. I ran like 45 minutes of some gaming. Cinebench I ran for 30 minutes. Now Cinebench, I left the CPU at stock. I didn't want to go into overclocking and all that. Left the CPU at stock for about 30 minutes in Cinebench R20. This is probably worst case scenario. No one really runs that 24/7. I was at about 75 degrees, which I didn't think was too bad. This is with all the fans on. I would say about a medium fan setting. I'll talk about these new TRYX fans as well. 45 minutes of Battlefield 2042. Days 2042, by the time of this video, the new Battlefield 6 beta is probably going to be out. I'll be keen to test that out. I'm not sure about you guys, but I am a huge Battlefield fan. So Battlefield 2042, 1080p, 45 minutes was about 67. And then Overwatch 2 at 1080p for 45 minutes as well was 61 degrees. So definitely not too bad overall. I do have a EK. This is a P360M down the bottom, P360M at the rear. So in at the bottom, out at the back. And that's it for the rad configuration. So not too bad overall. I didn't really have the time to throw some other blocks on here and do a full comparison, because there are other things to talk about. And then lastly on the block, it does come in the black or the white. Now I normally do white builds, but I thought this time I'll give a go doing a black build. But I think the white one would look really sick with the all white setup, white coolant like I've done here, and then the whole white chassis and so on. That would look pretty sick as well. Now moving on to the LUCA L70 Revision 1.0, which is the refresh one. Now I've got quite a few notes here because they did send me a whole list of all the changes. Just by having one case without the other, because I don't have the original version, it'd be very hard to pick up the changes. Like a lot of little subtle things, like the power button has been redesigned. It's nicer to push, feels nicer. The previous one you had to push on the very edge. It was more like a lever. This one you can push anywhere and it works really well. Now, if I didn't have that documentation comparing that, it'd be hard to sort of find all these little changes. Now, they've removed the hovering function of the front side panel. So I actually thought that was good. So when you unlatch the side panel at the top, it kind of stayed at an angle. It did not fall down. Always like cases that do that, because sometimes when you unclip a side panel, if it falls straight down, it could potentially break. But they did remove that because I do feel that, or they probably felt that a lot of users don't lift it up. So when you have that hovering function, it's got like a sleeve that latches in the bottom. So you drop it in and that's what locks it in. So if you unclip it and you continue to pull it down, you're gonna snap something off the bottom. You need to pull it down, get it at that angle and then lift it up. So they did remove that, probably better for most users. They've added a locking screw on this here on the main side panel for transportation. Before they didn't have that. So now they've got that. You can decide to use it or unscrew it once you've got your build done. Side panels now have locators. Now I think this is quite important. When you have these little pushing clips here and here, if you don't have these other locators here and on the front panel, so a locator is simply going to line up the pushing clips correctly with the side panel when you push it in. So the locators are on the side panel, same as on the front. So with the pushing clips, there's quite a lot of play and there's nothing to hold them in vertically. It's kind of just like a ball that goes into a socket and there's a bit of play. So to get that corrected and to make it sort of feel a bit nicer and a better user experience, they have those locators here and the holes here and on the front. So that guides it in. And then when it's in, you get no movement, especially on this front panel like this. There may be a little bit of play. Once you get that locator in, I'll push that in if I can. Can't get that back in. It will stop it from moving and bouncing around. So they've done that, which is good. Screws for adjusting the internal layout are larger and not countersunk. So yeah, so these ones here, they were very minimalistic before. You can probably see them on film. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Before they were countersunk, they were very, very small and they were often overlooked. Now what these ones do is hold all of these modular parts in place. So the whole PSU area is modular, motherboard tray is modular, and the bottom little cover panel, which you move from here to up the top when you move the layout, that was all adjusted via these screws. And before they were very fine, very hard to see. So they made them larger, you can see them. So you want to remove the PSU, undo these two, undo the thumb screw at the back, out goes that module. You can put it down the bottom. So they've just made them a bit larger, easier to see. The EPS cable cover is now larger. Mine is actually down the bottom, but when you go in the other layout, move the motherboard up, PSU down the bottom, you remove that cover from the bottom, put it at the top. That is now larger. It is easier to remove that, put your EPS cables in for your motherboard, then put that cover back in, and it really cleans that area up. The cables can go under and it looks really, really neat. The removable PSU cover. Now that was a little bit of a mission before, because when you slid it in, you had to randomly try and line up a hole in the PSU cover, which was threaded to the hole on the back of the chassis. So you had to kind of hold this and sort of wriggle it around until you got that screw in. Now there's a little notch for a slit and a little guide slides in, and that lines up the hole perfectly correct. Now they've adjusted some of the SSD and hard drive areas on the back behind the motherboard tray. They've adjusted the SSDs for a little bit more better fitment and a sort of bigger gap between them both. And for hard drives, they've added extra holes for hard drives that do not have the center hole, because not all hard drives have the same hole spacing. Not everyone knows that, but some hard drives have hole spacing at either end, or some only have the center and then another hole. So they've added it so all hard drives will be supported. IO cables are now longer. When I did my build, I didn't really have any issues, but it's one of those things where a lot of motherboards are different. Some have your 24 pin right up the top. So when they do that, they may have the USB 3 just under the 24 pin. That's going to be much higher than if your USB 3 internal header is going to be right down the bottom. Some of them even have your USB 3 header along the very bottom of the board, and then some have them on the side. So they've made those a bit longer. And then that can also be an issue too, having IO cables that are too long, because you don't want to have them an extra foot long, because then you have a whole bunch of cable routing at the back you got to manage. And especially with this chassis where the motherboard can go up and down, they have to cater for that as well. So they've made those longer. Captive thumb screws have been redesigned. In the first one, they were a little bit tricky on this side panel here because they were sort of catching when you unscrewed it. They've redesigned those. And I mentioned the power button as well has been redesigned, and that feels nicer to turn on and off. So that's basically all the changes for that. I believe this model is now live on the market, so there shouldn't be any of the previous ones. This is the new revision. Now talking a little bit about the new TRYX fans, these are the ROTA, I think that's right, ROTA SL ARGB 120, and I believe they come in 140 as well. Now they are, it's interesting, they're daisy chainable, but they don't daisy chain together sort of outside of your case or off your radiator. They don't use magnets to join together, they don't use clips, they are a single fan, but when you put them on a radiator, they have the pogo pins on one fan or on each fan, and then they have the connector mating side on the other fan, and then when you mount them on your device, whether you're mounting them to the top of the case like this, or if you're mounting them to the radiator, each time you screw one in, they just join together as they're screwed in. So no magnets, no nothing. I think that's pretty cool. The clip as well, I don't know if I can see one. I think there's one on the front, is also magnetic, and that just clips in as well like that. Nothing sort of more to talk about those. ARGB looks good. They don't have a reverse option yet. I did have some comments saying that I should have used reverse flow fans down the bottom. Yes, I would have loved to, but unfortunately, I wanted to deck this out with the TRYX gear because they sent me the water block and they sent me the fans to use. So of course I'm going to use those fans. So personally for this build, I would have preferred to go intake at the bottom, which I've done. You do see the ugly side of the fan, and I would have preferred to do intake on the side. I always like to bring fresh air or cool air into my radiators than outside the top or the rear of the case, but I really didn't want to see both sides on each rad of the fan. So you would have seen all the ugly side of the fan here. You would have seen the ugly side of the fan here. So I did do a little bit of compromise for that, so you could at least see one clean side on these fans. And the 3-pack goes for $79.99, so $80 for, I would say, semi daisy chainable fans. I'll probably say they are, because you do only get one connection on the end. You get one 3-pin ARGB connector on the end, and then you get one 3-pin or 4-pin, whichever it is, PWM fan header. So they are daisy chainable, they just don't physically connect together. Now, other stuff about this build, not sure how long this video is going for. My videos always seem to drag on and on. Other stuff. Now, the idea about this build, I wanted to do something, I don't know, a little bit different. I think a lot of my builds are very, very tame. Everyone says they're super clean, but this one, I just wanted to go out there and experiment with some different designs. Now, I recently discovered this really sick looking forged carbon. It is fake carbon fiber, or not carbon fiber, sort of forged carbon, but it does look really cool. Now, I recently used this on the G-Skill Computex build on the back panel in the red. I will probably put an Amazon link up for this. They have a lot of different colors, have like red, blue, teal, couple of different blacks. This is like a black and a gray, and it just all comes together nicely. You can do this on anything really. I did the rads. These EK rads are really easy to wrap. You can actually unscrew the whole side of the radiator. You can wrap them, wrap the other radiator. FLTs are very easy to wrap. This whole metal side that comes off, you can wrap that. Makes them good to paint as well. I was going to do some of the PSU area, but that was a bit of a nightmare to pull apart. I started pulling it apart, but there is a lot of glue. I wanted to do around the eye in the same vinyl wrap, but I couldn't disconnect or remove the mirror on the back. So I just left it as stock. And then I did a little bit on this vertical GPU riser, which I did made. Now, I do want to talk about this vertical option. I'll get some shots on the back because I designed the whole vertical riser myself. So the reason why I had to do this, because as you can see, this water block with the screen is quite bulky, and the Z height out from the motherboard is very, very, I would say, wide. It is just clearing this GPU block, and most vertical GPU risers sit in your PCI area, and it pushes it way back next to the motherboard, and there was no way for it to clear the water block. So another option I could have done is had nothing on the bottom of the chassis, and you could have put this down more and it would have cleared, but it would have looked funny. I would have been missing out on some cooling performance not having a radiator, and I think having a radiator at the bottom of the case just kind of looks normal. So what I thought was, well, there's a bit of room on the side here. Why don't I kind of hack that out? I can actually mount this bracket onto the fans. So this is like a bracket of aluminum that the standard riser cable sits on. And then I added this nice fascia bit. So there's no movement in this at all. There's a little bit at the end, but it is secured onto the fans, one on each end. And then it just has this nice cover panel. And then on the back, I just added a little right angle bracket to go into this mesh here. And then I did a little cutout for my display port. I actually only did a cutout for 2 display port because I'm not going to use this build long term, so I don't need all the ports. And then I just cleaned it up with a bit of a paint pen, because whenever you cut something that's finished, like painted, you will get the silver raw color once it's cut. So a good option is, instead of repainting like a whole area, because you're not going to match the same paint, just get like a paint pen and then you can just run it around that edge that you've cut and it will look exactly the same as what it was before. So yeah, redesigned or didn't redesign, made my own vertical bracket really to pop this out, and then you get a really nice view of this new EK. This is the 5090, I believe Vector³. This is their block and it looks really nice in person because I think previously EK never used O-rings more inside the block. So you did get a bit of coolant bleed. This one you get no coolant bleed. Obviously the outside you're going to have an O-ring of course, but a lot of blocks sometimes don't have O-rings on the inside. So you get coolant bleed between different areas. Like it's not going to do anything performance wise. It's not an issue. A lot of people post say, oh, my block is leaking. Well, yeah, it could be leaking internally through the different areas and the different layers, but it's not leaking externally. There's nothing to worry about. It just looks a little bit messy. So this one has no coolant bleed. Everything looks nice. And if you had like a color coolant, it would look really sick as well. And lastly, I want to talk about is the tubing. Now I had some comments that people say it'd be good if I could show how I do sort of this stealth tubing. Now, the reason why I don't show it is quite hard to film. Normally when I'm doing my time-lapse video, I film everything. I install the rads, I install everything. And then once it's up to the point where I've got everything done except for the tubing, I take the whole case into my workshop and then I just go to town on trying to route the tubing. And sometimes that could take an hour or two, and me trying to film that would be very, very hard. And the fact that some of these spots are super, super tight, like I can see down here on the back, there is 1, 2, 3, 4 connections of soft tubing, 2 at the back of the GPU block, and then 2 at the bottom of the CPU block. And there's no way I could film in that. And some sort of how I do this is to get it all in there nice and tight. I need to put a long bit of tube on, say, the back of the GPU block, or 2 bits of tube, one for the in, one for the out. Then I need to start feeding it out where I need to go. And as I'm pulling it, I need to start mounting the block in. And same for like, normally when I do top radiators in a case where I run the 2 out the back, or even down here, I've got these 2 running down the side. I need to feed them and then sort of shift them around as I am installing the radiator. And that would just be a nightmare to install on film. But if anyone wants to try this, I would recommend radiator ports that has ports on the sides, or even some hardware labs have ports on sort of the back side. So they have one on this side and one on the other side. That makes it really good for doing these stealth tubing builds. Things like the FLT, I use the ports at the bottom. The GPU, I use the ports at the back. And then it's kind of good that the GPU is so high. It's not high enough where it blocks a view of the screen on the block. It's just high enough where it blocks the ports coming out at the bottom of the CPU block where you don't see any of the tubing. And obviously using black tubing, that's the EK ZMT, I believe. And then also black fittings as well, really sort of makes it a stealthy look. And then flush stop fittings on the front, looks like it's completely invisible, sort of like a wireless loop. But I think that is pretty much it on this. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Covered the new Panorama water block, the changes in the chassis. Like I actually didn't go through the list of changes on the new revision just until recently. So I actually did this whole build without seeing it because I wanted to see if I did have any issues. And doing this new build, no issues at all. Nothing that was brought up previously when I think this case was launched, I would say probably about 6 or 7 months ago now. It has been a while, but I am actually glad that they did go to the effort. Like people might be thinking, well, why did it take so long? Well, tooling a case is very expensive. You're looking at hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually tool a case. That's why it's not so simple to just redesign the whole case and have something done within a month. They did do a lot of work, a lot of effort on redesigning a lot of parts, and I'd say kudos to them because I do think a lot of companies out there probably wouldn't have done that. But I think for them being new, they really wanted to sort of put their foot down in the market and sort of be like, hey, we're here to stay. We want to make things right. And this is the new revision. But anyway, I think that is it on this video. I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to thank TRYX for sending me or being one of the first to get the new water block. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.